He always did things to make sure that people had food, that he would say that there's no young person that's going to be hungry as long as I'm around. So he would do things.
Very well loved, respected. He was an asset to our community. He fed us good. He even went past food to do community service and to help community organizations and people.
That's exactly right. It's clear how much he meant to this community. So many people are posting on social media, sharing memories and honoring his legacy. Also, at the same time, Detroit police here at the 2nd Precinct are trying to find the person or people responsible for this triple shooting. And community leaders are saying this shooting is also raising a lot of questions about bars after hours.
It was 4:30 in the morning, February 28th, 2026. Detroit's northwest side, Schaefer Highway near Puritan Avenue. The kind of hour where the city is finally quiet, where the last of the night crowd is spilling out of lounges, cabs are rolling, and the streets carry that particular stillness that comes just before dawn. Suite 100, a cocktail lounge, was winding down, and then the shots rang out. 3 people were hit. 2 were found in front of the venue. A third was found across the street. That third victim was Michael Brown. Mike B., 52 years old, one of the most beloved figures in Detroit's restaurant and entertainment world. By the time officers arrived, it was already too late. The 2 others survived. He did not. Now, to understand why this loss hit Detroit the way it did, you have to understand who this man was. Because Mike B. wasn't just a name on a business license. He was a movement. He started as a promoter. Years before anyone knew him as a restaurateur, Mike B. was a guy who could fill a room. Detroit nightlife ran through people like him, men with the gift of connection, who understood how to bring a city together and make everyone in that room feel like they belonged there. He spent decades building that reputation, earning trust across every corner of the city. And then in 2020, when the world was shutting down and businesses were folding overnight, Mike B. did something nobody saw coming. He opened Sloppy Chops. It landed on West McNichols Road, and it hit differently. This was a proper steakhouse. Ribeyes, tomahawk cuts, the kind of food Detroiters were used to chasing downtown. But Mike B. put it in the neighborhood. And then came the $2 lamb chops, and Detroit lost its mind. People lined up around the block. People drove from across the city. People who'd never heard his name before suddenly knew exactly who Mike B. was. He hadn't just opened a restaurant. He had answered a question the community had been quietly asking for years. Why can't we have something this good right here, where we actually live? In 2021, he followed it up with Sloppy Crab, positioned on East Jefferson Avenue directly across from the Renaissance Center. That location was no accident. Downtown Detroit had been transforming for years. New hotels, new bars, new money moving in. But a lot of black Detroiters looked at that new downtown and felt invisible in it. Sloppy Crab planted a flag. DJ Motor City, one of Detroit's most respected names in music, said Mike created more than a restaurant. He built a gathering place where people from all walks of life could come together. That was the whole point. That had always been the whole point. So when the news broke on the morning of February 28th that Mike B. had been shot and killed outside Suite 100, Detroit didn't just grieve a business owner. It grieved a pillar. Pastor Maurice Mo Hardwick, founder of the Live and Peace movement, put it simply, Detroit loves him. He was a real Detroiter who was about people, community, and about uplifting life. Within hours, more than 1,000 comments flooded his Instagram. People who knew him personally. People who'd only ever eaten at his restaurants. People who had never met him but felt like they had, because that's the kind of presence Mike B. carried. And somewhere in that city, on that same morning, the person who pulled the trigger was still out there. No arrests, no suspects named, no motive released, just an open case, a grieving city, and a family left behind without answers. That's where this story begins.
Detroit loves him. He was a real Detroiter who was about people, community, and about uplifting life.
Let's talk about what the investigation has and hasn't told us, because the silence from authorities has been just as loud as anything else in this case. When Detroit Police Department officers arrived on Schaefer Highway in the early hours of that Saturday morning, what they found was a scene split across 2 locations. 2 victims on one side of the street, outside the front of Suite 100. A third, Mike B., on the other side. That detail matters. The fact that he was found across the street from the other 2 victims raises questions that haven't been publicly answered. Was he trying to get away? Was he caught in crossfire meant for someone else? Was he targeted specifically? Law enforcement hasn't said, and that silence weeks into the investigation has been unsettling for a community that wants answers. What police did say, through media relations manager Jasmine Barmore, was measured and brief. 3 victims, 1 fatality. Investigation ongoing. Tips welcome. The kind of statement that tells you just enough to confirm the worst and nothing more. No suspect description was released. No vehicle of interest. No witness accounts made public. For a shooting that happened outside a busy nightlife venue at 4:30 in the morning, a time and place where people are present, where security cameras exist, where the night crowd doesn't just evaporate, the public silence of investigators has felt, to many in Detroit, like a wall. Crime Stoppers was activated. Detroit Rewards TV put out the call, and the community was urged to come forward with anything they knew. But as of now, that call has not produced a public arrest. The case remains open. The person or people responsible remain unidentified, at least publicly. Now here is where the human texture of this story gets complicated, because Suite 100 wasn't a random location for Mike B. This was his world. Nightlife, late nights, the social circuit of Detroit's entertainment scene. That had been his life long before the restaurants. He knew these spaces. He was comfortable in them. He was respected in them, which makes what happened that morning not just a tragedy, but a profound violation of a world he had helped build. People who run in those circles in Detroit will tell you that Mike B. was the kind of man who didn't carry enemies easily. The tributes that poured in after his death didn't come from one corner of the city. They came from everywhere, from the neighborhoods, from downtown, from the music world, from the food world, from the church community. That kind of universal love doesn't happen by accident. It's earned over decades by a man who consistently showed up for people, which is exactly what makes the motive question so difficult. In the absence of any official statement about why this happened, speculation has filled the vacuum. Was it a dispute that escalated inside the lounge? Was it a robbery gone wrong? Was it something more personal, more premeditated? Nobody outside the investigation knows. And the investigation isn't talking. What we do know is that Mike B. had recently been pushing harder than ever. His brand was expanding. His restaurants were thriving. He had plans, real, concrete plans, to grow the sloppy name further, to take what he'd built in Detroit and push it to the next level. He was, by every account, a man in the middle of his prime, not winding down, building up, and that makes the timing of his death feel even more cruel. Cut down not at the end of something, but right in the middle of it. Pastor M.O. said something that has stayed with people who knew Mike B. He said this death does not reflect the way this man lived. And that tension between a life built on community and love and an ending that came of violence in the dark is at the heart of everything this case represents. Detroit is still waiting for someone to break that silence. There's a particular kind of grief that settles over a city when it loses someone who was still in the middle of doing good, not someone whose chapter had closed, not someone who had already handed the baton on, someone who was still running, still building, still giving, still showing up. That is the grief Detroit is carrying right now, and it is heavy. Think about what Mike B. represented beyond the restaurants. In a city that has spent years watching development roll in and wondering who it was actually for, he was a concrete, visible answer. He didn't wait for someone to invite him downtown. He walked in and set a table. He didn't complain that the neighborhoods were being left behind. He opened a steakhouse on West McNichols and made it undeniable. That kind of leadership, quiet, practical, rooted in action rather than argument, is rare. And once it's gone, you feel the absence of it in ways you didn't expect. His staff felt it immediately. The people he employed, the young men and women who learned how to run a kitchen, how to work a floor, how to be part of something professional and Black-owned and thriving. They lost a mentor the moment they lost him, Dr. Sabrina Jackson, who spoke publicly in the days after his death, talked about how Mike B made sure young people never went hungry. That wasn't a figure of speech. He fed people, literally, physically. He understood that you can't build a community on an empty stomach, and he acted on that understanding every single day. His family lost a husband and a father, and while the public details of his home life have been kept private, as they should be, as his family deserves, everyone who knew him personally spoke about that role with the same weight they gave everything else about him. He was, by all accounts, the same man at home that he was in public. Generous, present, the kind of man who made the people closest to him feel like the most important people in the room. That consistency between who you are in public and who you are behind closed doors is not something everyone manages. Mike B did. And somewhere in Detroit right now, someone knows what happened on Schaefer Highway. Someone was there. Someone saw something. Someone heard something. Someone knows a name, knows a face, knows a detail that could unlock this case and give Mike B's family what they deserve. Not closure, because there is no such thing when you lose someone this way, but truth, accountability, a measure of justice in the face of something unjust. Detroit has a complicated relationship with that word. Justice. It has watched cases go cold. It has watched families wait years for answers that never came. It has learned, sometimes painfully, not to hold its breath. But it has also seen what happens when a community decides that enough is enough, when someone who knows something finds the courage to pick up the phone and make the call. Crime Stoppers. The Detroit Police Homicide Unit. Detroit Rewards TV. The lines are open. The investigation is active. The family is waiting. Mike B spent his whole life making Detroit better than he found it. He did it as a promoter, filling rooms and creating joy. He did it as a restaurateur, putting world-class food in neighborhoods that deserved it. He did it as a husband, a father, a friend, a mentor, a pillar. He did it every single day for 52 years without asking for a headline or trophy. He just did the work because the work mattered. The least Detroit can do now is make sure his story doesn't end with an open file and an unanswered question. Say his name, share what you know, and let the city that Mike B loved so fiercely finally give something back.